Hello and welcome to another home staging episode. My name is Kasha, and yes, that's how you pronounce it. And today I want to talk about dining rooms. Now, I know some of you either love them or hate them. You either want one or don't want one. And I get that. That's to each his own. Each one has their own different family situations, and I understand. But I do want to know is, if you have a dining room, do you actually use it? Do you have a formal dining room? In one of our houses that we lived in Virginia, we were there about 10 years ago, we had a separate eat-in kitchen area, which we had this table that I'm sitting at, because I'm sitting in my dining room right now. And then we had a formal dining room table with the hutch and everything in the dining room. And we found ourselves not using the dining room very often, so I made a rule and said, look, every Sunday we are going to sit in the formal dining room and eat whatever meal it is that we're having, whether it's pizza, hamburgers, barbecue, whatever. We're sitting at that table and having a meal and using it. So I know some of you may use it only for when you have guests over, or literally it is just a dust magnet and is not used for anything. But a lot of you have been creative during these COVID times and reusing that space. And I want to go over some of those things and then how you can decorate your dining room and actually use this space. Make it a multi-purpose room, if you will. So what I want to talk about are things that you can change and use a dining room for, and then how you can decorate it, okay? So like I said, some of you have been a little creative. Some of you have had to become creative because of COVID, because you have to do the virtual and distance learning from home. So the dining area and table seems to be the best bet for that. And that's because the table is so big, right? It's kind of separated off, depending on what kind of dining room you have. Now this one that I'm in is an open concept floor. So it's really open to everything. So it's really not the best place for any kind of homework type place. But you can use it for your office space too, if you need to. But if you have a dining room that maybe has some columns or it's maybe more closed off, then that's another way that you can use the space for homework, for virtual learning, however you use that, okay? Some of you actually transform the dining room into a guest bedroom, which if you need that, okay, and you don't use a dining room because you have another eat-in area, okay, go for that. You know, if that's what you use it for, that's perfectly fine. Some of you have transformed it into playrooms because there is no other playroom in the house for the kids to hang out, whether it's video games, whether you have little toddlers, they just need a space just to kind of play and have their stuff there in that one space versus their bedroom or the living room and taking up space there, right? So one of the things that I've found out that in this one in particular, we don't have the space for a china hutch or buffet, but if you do have a dining room that has space for that, you can still use it for your dishes if you have the fine china, or if you're reusing it and repurposing the dining room, that's a great place to put your school supplies, right? The binders, the books, the composition notebooks, the craft supplies, you know, those types of things. That's a great way to kind of lock up behind a door. You know, you have those drawers there for normally the silverware, but you can put the crayons and markers and whatever else you need there to put your home school supplies away, right? So that's just another unique way that you guys have been very creative in using your dining rooms. But when it comes to selling your house, I've seen it go both ways. I've seen dining rooms that are shown as dining rooms, and sometimes it's, like I said, a little more creative, and it's an office or it's a playroom or whatever. The trend has been changing, so there's really not one good way. As long as it's presentable, clean, you can see how the space is used, and then it's not empty, so that people don't have to guess, well, what do I put in here? Sometimes you can guess by the chandelier if there is one. In this room, we don't have one. I'll show you in a little bit when I get to that section. But the dining room, if you have one, there's many different ways to make it a little less formal if that's the style that you're going for. Everyone has a different decorating style, whether it's farmhouse, whether it's retro, mid-century modern, whatever, all the different kinds, boho mix. I've seen a lot of different styles out there, and that's great. I'm glad you guys are trying out different things to see what makes you happy and how you use that space, because really the dining room should not be a museum. It should not be collecting dust. Use the space for something, okay? And then when it comes to sell it, we could talk about that towards the end, what you can do to make it sell, okay? All right, so what are a couple of things that you can do to make your dining room less formal? One of the things is mixing and matching the chairs. All right, so I have these wooden chairs here. They don't have any cushions on there or anything like that. They're nothing fancy. They're not the Queen Anne type chairs or anything like that. This table and chairs set we got from World Market, and it was meant to use every day, basically. It's not a formal one, but I can dress it up to become formal when I have a tablecloth put on it, when I have more decor stuff for the holidays, or for when I have, fancy dishes or something like that, right? So you can totally upgrade it, just like when you do your clothes, right? When you're going out, you can turn a black dress into a work type thing and then make it fun for an evening night out with, fancy little cute shoes or a little purse or whatever. You know what I mean? So same thing with the dining room. You can make it go up or go down. Formal, less formal. So start with the basics and then add things like mixing and matching your chairs. So what I mean by that is maybe you have a velour or a nice upholstered chair that you can put at both ends of the table, and then the other chairs are just plain brown. That's fine, especially if you have kids. You don't want them to sit on the upholstered chairs, right? Or if you do, it's the kind that you can wipe off pretty easy, right? So that's another way that you make it less formal or kick it up a notch, right? Another way, the dining rooms can be less formal, especially if they're more open to the area here. So like I said, mine's a more open concept flooring, and let me show you what I mean by that. So it's all open. There is nothing to hide here. So I got a little computer area, I've got a or a living room area with a TV, and then the kitchen. It is all open. Everyone can see if you have a mess on the kitchen or the dining table, right? So you definitely want to keep that in mind. Keeping it simple, not formal, okay? Another thing you can do is change out the chandelier. And we talked about just a little bit about that. This one here, we're renting this house, so I can't change. Although I could change the lighting, and then I gotta change it back. Don't feel like doing that. So let me show you this one here. This lighting fixture up here is this dinky little thing. It's a 3-prong. Yeah, it doesn't do much. It gives you enough light to eat by if it's dark outside, or if it's really cloudy. But yeah, if you can change that chandelier to make it more fun, if you are into the rustic kind, or you want something mid-century modern, some kind of globes or circles or whatever, have fun with that. You can totally change up that chandelier. No one says it has to be some stuffy frosted glass thing that you're just not crazy about, okay? There's so many different light options out there that you just gotta pick which one you like the best. Okay, so changing out the light fixture is another way to make it less formal, right? Another thing you can do in the dining room is, instead of getting a rectangular table like I have here, you can get a round table. And now, there's nothing wrong with putting a round table in a square room or a rectangular shaped room. It makes it more cozy. But for our family of 5, I needed a rectangular table to fit us. Because the round tables can be smaller, but I'm like, well, I'd rather have more room than not enough room. So again, it depends on the size of the dining room that you have, right? Sometimes there's oval shapes, for the table. So again, take a look at what the size of your room is, measure it out, and see how big of a table can you really fit in here. But a round table is another great way to make it less formal, okay? Mix and match the chairs. So no one says you have to buy the set that comes the table with the chairs. You can always separate it out and just buy say there's a table that you really, really love, but you're not crazy about the chairs. Get different chairs. It's okay. No one says they have to match like that. If it's something you love. I had one client who had this nice round white oak type table, kind of whitewashed, but she really loved these like turquoise velour type chairs. And it's just her and her husband. and their kids are adults, you know, and they're like, we're not going to have kids in here. I'm like, go for it. Why not? Bradway brings in color, which is another thing that I want to talk about. When you bring in color into your dining room, that is one way to do it with the chairs, you know. Pick an upholstered one, or if it's a, you know, different colored chairs instead of the wooden chairs. Maybe it's a white one. Maybe it's, I don't know, red, blue. Okay? Something that makes you happy, right? Speaking of chairs, you don't have to have chairs all around the table to make it less formal. On one side of our rectangular table, we had a bench, and the kids sat on that bench because there was no back to that bench, and you can fit 3 little butts on there, right? And if they fit, the adults had chairs with backings to them because we need, you know, we can't be slouching, right? So we have backs so we can lean up against something. But then the kids outgrew that bench, so I'm like, okay, well, now I got to put chairs back, and so that they can sit upright and you know, have meal, right? So yeah, so a bench is another way to make it a little less formal. If you have a built-in, maybe you have a wall that you can do like a built-in or a built-in bench. Sometimes like a banquette if you have a corner of the room, because it just depends on the size of the room and how it's shaped and where everything is. That's another idea that you can have for your dining area, right? So maybe you don't have a formal dining room, but you have an eat-in kitchen area, and that's the only place you can eat. That's another great way to add space and fit people to sit around and enjoy a meal, right? But another thing that you can do, we talked about a little bit about color. So color, another thing you can do is add with artwork. Now, behind me, if you can see, I have this canvas piece right here. It's really big. But you can use artwork to help bring color into a room. Or curtains, like the one behind me. I have gray ones and this one in particular. But personally, I love the orange and blue color combination together. But you can totally change that out to be a different kind of piece of artwork. Around Christmas time, I will change that out, and I have a Christmas moose that lights up. The little lights are on the antlers. It's a lot of fun. But no one says that painting has to stay there all year round. You can change it out to be whatever you want, right? So maybe in spring, if you love spring colors, maybe that's something that you change out, right? Another thing you can do with color is the middle of the table, and that could be a table runner. So tablecloths are kind of, if you're older, the older generation loves tablecloths. I personally like runners because they're nice and easy to take off. They don't take up a lot of space, and they don't get as dirty as much. But I have like this one, nice fun colors, green and blue. There's also another one here that I actually got at a thrift store. It was this gray with orange and yellow. So there's lots of different colors you can use, again, for the different seasons. And then let me show you this one right now. I have a white one, and there's my little centerpiece for fall with some little pumpkin gourds and a candle and some leaves and sunflowers. So color is a great way that you can bring into your living or dining room when it comes to, you know, just dressing it up a little bit, right? So again, you can make it formal, you can make it less formal, however you want to do that. That's with color, you can do that, okay? Plants are another way to add color and interest into the dining room. We have this nice little ledge over here by the windows that I can put plants on. I have this fake one back here you can see behind my shoulder over here. That's just a frond, like a palm frond, a monstera, I think is what it's called. I got it at IKEA, so it's fake, and then a white vase to put in it. And it's, you know, while it's fake, you could put real ones too. I just tend to not make them live very long in my house. Outside, when Mother Nature can water them, I do a lot better. Inside, not so much. But plants are a great way if you love plants. You can put them in your dining room, but just don't clutter them up too much, right? Another thing you can do to make it less formal, if you do have a china hutch and you're using the dining room for multi-purpose things, you can put board games and card games in that hutch, in those cabinets. It's a great way to stash things and then kind of close the doors. No one can see what's behind those doors. They may just see, oh, it's a dining room with a china hutch. But when you open it, it's like, oh no, it's the game center of the house, because maybe you're a family that loves to play board games or card games or whatever. So that's another great way to use your dining room, show it off as it is, but then use it for so many different things, okay? And lastly, one of the other things I've seen in dining rooms is that if you have a wall, for me, we have lots of windows in here, so I can't. But they've had a built-in where they had like bookshelves and things like that, or even floating shelves if you have the rooms for that. That's another thing that you can put on a wall in a dining room, and you can have, like I said, plants, you can have little pictures, you can have lots of different little things in there, but then store things like if you have board games or card games or things like that, or books, you know. So those are just some ideas on how to make your dining room a little less formal, a little more multifunctional, so that you use the space, because when you're locked in your house for COVID and quarantining, those walls just close in on you, don't they? So those are just some ideas on how you can use your formal dining room, maybe make it a little less formal. But when it comes to staging your house and you have a dining room, or maybe you have a formal dining room, keep it simple. There's no reason to have to make it really complicated. When I stage a home, I actually don't set out the china or the dishes, you know, the silverware and the glasses, and have a table setting. Number one, because no one lives like that. Maybe there's a few of you that do, but not very many. And when you're using the space for homework or your home office, those dishes really get in the way. There's no reason to have them out. And then lastly, if you are having a showing and have these dishes and silverware out and everything, someone may accidentally break something, or God forbid, steal it. Okay? So don't put out your dishes. The simplest thing you can do is have a little bit of artwork, have some curtains or shutters or blinds, whatever you may have in that room. Have a simple runner like this one. This one's a white one I got from IKEA. And then you can have this little centerpiece like I have. And that one's basically, all I used for that was a cake platter that I don't use very often, only for like birthday celebrations or, you know, parties and stuff, which we're not having that many parties right now. But it's a great way to kind of lift it up, put a candle, some flowers, some leaves, change it up for the season, whatever you want, and then you can easily take it away when you're serving food and having a meal, or using it for homework space, right? So those are some ideas. Again, if you're staging it, keep it simple. You don't want to see a sea of brown and brown with the table and chairs. Add a bit of color, have some artwork, put a nice centerpiece. It could be fresh flowers if you don't have a cake platter type thing. You can have just candles in the middle. Just keep it simple, nothing too extravagant, and you don't need to have dishes out at all when staging your dining room, okay? So if you have any other questions, I hope you can contact me. You can DM me on Instagram and Facebook. bluediamondstaginganddesign.com is my website. You can take a look at my calendar and get on there for a consultation. I'd love to help you out. Have a great day.